Palantir. Alex Karl has been talking about the fact the company has been building products the world doesn't yet know it needs. Because of that, it can be quite difficult to fully understand the total addressable market of a company like Palantir. In your mind, how big is that total addressable market?
Yeah, so for Palantir, the sky's the limit in terms of kind of where they're going. If we just look at everything Palantir has today, okay, we don't take into account anything that Palantir is working on behind the scenes that we don't know about right now, which I'm sure is an immense amount of product pipeline they have. If we just think about what they have today, I don't see a way that if you're a Fortune 500 type company, I don't see there being a way that you can at least consider using a product from Palantir over the next 5 years. Doesn't mean you absolutely will sign up for their product, but I think you at least they're in the running, right? And so from my standpoint, Palantir's TAM is as big as you can think in terms of governments and in terms of big corporations. I think the next major growth lever that I'm hoping Palantir has up their sleeve, and maybe this is something they're working on, is making their products where they can really attack mid-sized businesses and small businesses as well. If they can have a game-changing software for even those sorts of companies, then we're really talking about really opening up to just everybody in business. Because the way it comes across to me, at least, is it's really for their products are really for big governments and obviously for big let's call it clients in terms of Fortune 500 type companies. So my view is the sky's the limit, but we know with them that they create the best of breed products. So it's not all a realm of possibility to imagine they're working on some stuff right now that is going to be for the whole entire business complex.
And as leaders go, Alex Karp is a pretty divisive one. He's got some pretty strong opinions sometimes. Do you think he's a good leader for the company? Is he a sort of CEO, founder, which you love to see? Or is he, maybe a bit too far out there for you?
So I don't know if he's the best leader in terms of the stock price goes, because Wall Street doesn't really like his type of, taking stances on many divisive issues, and some of his views might not be what, let's call it, some other folks in other countries might want to have as their views, or folks that may line in different political ideologies or from different perspectives in general, right? But in terms of his leadership of the company, you just kind of got to look at what he's built over time. Look at where Palantir's revenues have gone over the last, let's say, 10, 15 years or so, right? And look what he's built here, and look at the products they have in the market. And from what I view is they've done a great job, and he's done a great job as a leader. And the other big thing about being a leader, especially of a big company, is can you attract the best talent out there? And from what I have gathered for data, and a lot of folks I've spoken with, these folks tell me that Palantir is the hardest company to pretty much get hired at. They said they could get jobs at many of the other big tech companies easily compared to what they could get a job at Palantir. And so as a leader, that shows me that you are attracting some of the most incredible product engineers out there, right? And developers out there. And if you think about what Elon's been able to do with Tesla, with SpaceX, one of the reasons he's been so successful is because he's attracted such incredible talent. And I've known a lot of former Tesla employees or current Tesla employees, and those folks are brilliant. And it seems like Palantir's done that same exact thing with Alex Karp and just attracted incredible talent. So he's a right type of leader for the company, especially being how connected the company is with the U.S. government. I think he has a lot of the same views that the U.S. government might, in terms of especially, when it comes to the battlefield, when it comes to dealing with adversaries. But from the point of the stock price, I don't know if he's necessarily the best person. So I actually prefer that other folks get out there and talk more about what the company's up to, company numbers, rather than Alex Karp, because he's when you listen to that man talk, he can go off, for 10 minutes talking about philosophies of this and that, and this government, and sometimes you just want to talk about business. And so that's where I view other people definitely have to step up more for Palantir, and Alex Karp's got to allow those people to, so Wall Street can really start to hopefully understand this company to a better extent than they have in the past. Because in order for this company to succeed in terms of stock price over the coming 5-10 years, you're going to need big money to really understand what's going on here, the opportunities ahead, and what the company's doing. And so that's kind of my views on Karp.
Palantir's business model is split up into two at the moment. we've got the government portion, and we've got the commercial portion. If we start on the government portion, it's a more mature side of the business. Do you think there's still a lot of growth there? And is that part of the business you're quite optimistic about as well?
The government business, I'm not as optimistic as the commercial business. However, I am still optimistic. Palantir has the type of products that government agencies have to use and have to at least consider using or ultimately use in general, right? And if there's one thing with governments over time, governments spend more and more money, right? And they up their budgets more and more and more over a 3-year, 5-year, 10-year span. They usually don't go the other way in terms of like cutting budgets. They usually spend more and more and more. And so if I think about that, I think an opportunity for a company like a Palantir is much greater, let's say in 10 years from now, than it is currently in 2023. I think it's a lot more in 2033, right? And you could say maybe a Palantir's products will even need to be needed at even a higher level, let's say 5 years out or 10 years out, if the geopolitical situation stays in a rough place. But regardless, I think there's tremendous opportunity in the government segment. I just think there's much bigger opportunity in the commercial segment if we're thinking about the next 5 to 10 years in front of this company.
So we've seen, talking about the commercial side of the business, and the growth in the US has been very strong. It's starting now to penetrate more into Europe. Do you think if they can prove themselves in Europe as well, then we really have got an insane product offering here from a commercial point of view?
I do. One of the main issues, especially with the European market, is it does tend to move slower. That is something we've seen. The US seems to move much quicker when it comes to kind of best of breed products, where in Europe, it just moves slower. And it's just differences in kind of how those markets operate, right? And if we think about, the United States versus Europe in terms of tech companies, right? Look at all the biggest, most dominant tech companies, as of today. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon, you could look at Tesla, Google. I mean, they're all US companies. And it's just a difference maybe in cultures. It's maybe a difference in bureaucracy. It's maybe a difference in the way the governments work, maybe the way the populations view different things. But US just seems to always be using stuff before Europe and getting to that scale much quicker, right? And so I'm not that worried about it. I do think over time, the European market will adapt more and more Palantir's products, whether on the commercial side or the government side. I just think they've been probably a little slow, and that's just kind of the way it is in Europe. And it's no shots at Europe, because European markets are phenomenal for many other industries and many other things, and are ahead on many other things. But when it comes to tech, when it comes to software, they lag, and they lag pretty significantly.
So if we look at the US as a market, do you think we could be in a position where every company in the S&P 500 is using Palantir? And then is that in itself going to create a bit of a network effect, as all their suppliers have to be tuned in with the software as well? And that could help things really exponentially grow as well?
Yes, I think I really view this next 36 months as being that time period when Palantir is either going to get to escape velocity, or they're going to stay as a kind of niche player in the market. This next 36 months is going to tell us which happens. Because as you spoke about there, the more and more clients that use Palantir and can tell those stories to other, because everybody talks inside industries, right? Everybody talks. Fortune 500 CEOs, they speak to other ones because they're on board of directors of other companies. They have them in their phone contact list, right? They're doing business with each other, or they just build friendships over time as being people that are in that industry. And so what I believe is going to happen with Palantir, this is my thought process on it, is more and more companies are going to use Palantir. They're going to have more and more success. And I believe these CEOs, CFOs, are going to tell other CEOs and CFOs and executives that, hey, we used Palantir and we spent $15 million a year on the software, but it saved us $30 million a year, or it helped generate us an extra $25 million, or, did this or that whatever we spent through Palantir, it got us out exponentially more on the other side. And you think about even like people inside organizations. So let's say the Tyson Foods use Palantir, okay? And so their CEO, CFO, and their other high-level executives see how successful the product has been. Well, then there's a layer of employees that are like the next executives of either Tyson, or they're going to go to other companies. So if they see something like a Palantir software in action, and they see how tremendous it is, What ends up happening is when those people get their next promotion or go get another job at another company to rise the ranks, right? Because we know executives, they want to rise the ranks further. They're going to consider using Palantir with their companies, which also creates kind of a network effect. And eventually Palantir could hit an escape velocity. And that could be an exciting point. But this next 36 months, in my opinion, is that time period when Palantir is either going to reach that escape velocity or stay kind of a niche player. My chips are on the table in terms of them. They're going to reach that escape velocity, but we'll see. They got to obviously execute and prove that out.
Yeah. So of course you do have a position in Palantir. What sort of things are you looking out for from a bear point of view, or from a point of view to be, red flags to be watching when it comes to Palantir?
A few things. So one is earnings per share. I want to look at earnings per share, and I want to see, can this company really be GAAP profitable quarter in and quarter out now at this point in time? We know Karp has he's committed to being GAAP profitable on a yearly basis, but he's not done so on an every quarter basis. So the question is, if, let's say, one quarter comes up and they're not profitable on a GAAP basis, is that going to create some sort of dynamic where everybody believes, they're not going to be profitable moving forward? So I think that's something that's important to pay attention to, especially in this environment. Everybody wants a company to be profitable. No one wants to be in a money loser right now, right? If you think about any stock that's held up decent over the past 1 to 2 years, it's all companies that make, obviously are cash printers. And anybody that is seen as a money loser, their stocks have fallen dramatically, including obviously Palantir fits in that category. I'm going to keep an eye on revenue growth. We know it's not an exciting time for revenue growth for almost any company out there in 2023, right? I mean, heck, Amazon's barely grown revenue. Apple's expected to have, as far as analyst expectations, Apple's expect to have their revenue go down 4% in this quarter they're about to report coming up here very soon. When you see things like that, we're in a bad environment, right? When Tesla's able to grow units very nicely, but let's say they're only able to grow revenue 18% for Tesla, that's awful for Tesla, right? I mean, tremendous for other companies, but not good for Tesla. So when you think about even companies like Amazon, Shopify, Tesla, at much slower growth rates, that's gonna bring down something like a Palantir as well. But the question I'm kind of looking at is, are they going to come even under what bears have? But recently, if we think about recently, Karp has said, he sounded really confident. He's done a few interviews recently, including one on CNBC. And I got to say that, kind of reading through what Karp's saying there, he sounds like he's really optimistic for 2023 based upon what I gathered from that. And so I wouldn't be surprised if maybe Palantir's in a position where they're maybe beating a lot of earnings in 2023 versus missing earnings in 2022, right? So, but yeah, from the bear side, gotta look at obviously the GAAP profitability. I think that's going to be very big, and keeping a decent revenue growth of double digits at least for this entire year when it's a year that's not an exciting revenue year.